It's often said that Debe Ojukwu was the first and only Nigerian, in that he was born to parents of southern heritage in the north of Nigeria and educated in the west. However, today, Nigeria stands on the precipice of fragmentation. Would you therefore say that the sacrifice of your father and the people of Biafra was in vain?
There has been a common strand running through his life. And that common strand was that he personified Nigeria so much.
Indeed.
It started from the way your opener, that he was born in the south, he was born in the north, he was of the south, and then educated in the west. Again, don't lose sight of the fact of the impulsion of joining the Nigerian army. It was because the Nigerian army at that time was one of the few institutions where you could actually embrace true nationalism. That was also a synergy. That was also a formation of Nigeria. Then before the war, among all the actors that played out during the war, he somewhat emerged as the only one that really fought for continued existence of Nigeria. He had a responsibility. He was the governor of the eastern group of provinces when his people were massacred in the north. They came back in droves. He sent them back to the north. The Sarkin house, however, that was in the east, he even escorted him to the boundary. All were sacrifices he made to ensure the unification, the continued unity of Nigeria. It was when our people went back and were still massacred that somewhat tacitly he believed that second wave of pogrom, he felt responsible to that. And that's the greatest sacrifice anybody could do. He sacrificed for Nigeria. When the war was coming to a head, he could have stood in the battlefield and lost his life. If he had done that, there would have been mass suicide. There would have been a continued pogrom, because some officers of the Igbos would rather die than surrender to the federal troops. But he decided to exit the stage to create that conducive atmosphere for the continued existence of Nigeria. That's also another sacrifice for the unity of Nigeria. He left, he went to the Ivory Coast. He spent 13 years. I was always visiting him there. I knew how the Ivorians regarded him. But despite the honor and the comfort he had in the Ivory Coast, he still came back to Nigeria. Also, another sacrifice for the unification of Nigeria. He could have taken off from Ivory Coast, gone to any part of the world, armed with its excellent educational qualifications, and he would have fitted in. So many other people from our Igbo land left and never came back. Some went to Canada, some were in US. But after 13 years, he decided to come back, exemplifying another sacrifice for a united Nigeria. He came back to Nigeria against all postulations. He decided to join partisan politics. And in joining the partisan politics, he never fainted to be sectional. He decided to join the parties, and they explained it away with the fact that he wanted to take his people back to the mainstream of Nigerian politics. That's why I am a firm believer and the witness to the fact that his life traces Nigeria. His life is Nigeria and ended Nigeria.
And isn't that the paradox? Because the very things that took him into
military conflict are the things which are today confronting Nigeria. Nigeria today has conflict on a daily basis. Are the issues which Boko Haram, in some ways reflecting the issues which he faced a generation ago? Poverty, lack of development, no progress, the necessity for a people to feel comfortable. Are those not the issues which are being faced by Nigeria today, which would imply that his sacrifice has been in vain if we continue down the road of open conflict? Are we going to see another open conflict, but this time being initiated from the forces of Islam?
Surprisingly, I wouldn't dismiss his sacrifices as being in vain. Because even though we may not have realized in his lifetime his expectations, the lessons of his sacrifices continually stares us in the face. It's like a history book which we could always refer to. The issue of Boko Haram he had always discussed with me. He had told me that we fought a civil war. A very harrowing experience. But he tells me, Sylvester, we should pray to eschew the religious war. It was from him I learned the distinction. So I believe his sacrifice was not in vain. The only unfortunate thing about his sacrifice was that the Nigerian government never sought to redress it. It's a question, the whole thing goes into a hodgepodge. It is a basket. And what is that basket? It is injustice. You are just giving it different names. Poverty, this. It is injustice. Whereas the land is just and everybody experiences equity.
So wherein lies the future for Nigeria in addressing this injustice, which continues to cripple its people?
Of course.
What, in your view, would be the approach to address this?
Take it from the point of education. It must be available to all. The poorest person should be able to have education available from the primary up to tertiary level. Take it in terms of medical facilities. It should be available. Take it in terms of the judiciary. There should be a situation where the poorest of Nigerians should have that last bastion of justice, where they could go to the judiciary and hope to garner justice.